Hi, this is John Claybaugh with Sound Real Estate Brokers in Olympia, Washington. Today we're going to look at your typical home selling costs in Thurston County. When you go to sell your home, what are your expenses? What do you have to pay at closing? Let's go through it. The first closing cost we'll talk about is called settlement costs, and that means escrow and title insurance. So the escrow agent is the neutral third party that's going to handle the funds and the execution of the contract, and that escrow fee is typically split 50-50. Buyer pays half, seller pays half. And then title insurance, the seller will buy a title insurance policy covering the buyer at the time of closing. Another settlement cost is your mortgage payoff. How much money do you owe on the mortgage? Are there any amounts in arrears? Are you behind on your payments? We'll also look at whether or not there's a prepayment penalty, and all of those will be paid out at closing. Another selling cost, prorated property tax. On the day of closing, the escrow agent is going to look at what's the date today, how many days has the seller owned this property this year, how many days will the buyer own the property this year, and how much money has already been paid in the property tax, and then they'll prorate it, and they'll figure it out so that the seller is only paying property tax for their period of ownership, and the buyer is only paying property tax for their period of ownership. And as the seller, you might be paying out money for property tax, to make that fair proration. Or if you've already paid your property tax for the year, then you might get money back at closing. So your property tax costs at closing kind of depend on the situation. Another type of selling cost to keep in mind are buyer closing costs that are paid by the seller. Because sometimes a buyer, especially if they're a first-time home buyer, might not have enough cash to bring to closing to cover their down payment and their closing costs. Buyer closing costs typically include things like mortgage origination fees, appraisal fees, that sort of thing. If the buyer is strapped for cash, they will ask the seller during their negotiations, hey, will you please help pay for some of this? Now, usually when a buyer does that, they will offer more money on the purchase price to make up for it. But just keep in mind as a seller, you may be asked to pay some of the buyer's closing costs. And there's really nothing wrong with that. That's not something that should be stigmatized, I don't think. It's just look at the bottom line after that and see if that works out for you. Another selling cost to be aware of, real estate fees. In other words, commissions. Now I'm going to tell you the best kept secret in the real estate industry. Commissions are negotiable. There's no such thing as a set commission rate that everyone has to take. It's fully negotiable between the seller and the listing broker. So if you've got a listing broker in front of you and they're going to put your house on the market, you are totally free to try to negotiate the commission with them. Some brokers will have a policy of their own, like a business or office policy that says, no, our commission rate is this and only this. But here at Sound Real Estate Brokers, my wife Rebecca and I own the brokerage, so we can do whatever we want. And we are fully willing to negotiate commissions depending on the circumstances. We're going to take into account factors like how hard is this property going to be to sell? Is it a property where we're going to have to spend a lot of money on marketing and advertising? Or is it going to be easy, an easy one that kind of sells itself? For a challenging property, we're going to try to get a higher commission rate than for a property that we think will go really quickly. So keep in mind, real estate fees, fully negotiable. You also might have some miscellaneous closing costs, such as document preparation fees, maybe notary fees, especially if you use a mobile notary, recording fees, the county charges per page when you record the sale documents. So those are selling costs that'll come out too. Another selling cost to be aware of, homeowners association fees. If you live in a neighborhood with a homeowners association, there could be some fees that will be taken out at closing. So if you're behind on your dues, if you're in arrears, they will take those payments out of your net proceeds at closing, or some homeowners associations have a transfer fee anytime the property is sold, and that could be paid by either the buyer or the seller, but that's a potential selling cost to be aware of. Now let's talk about some out-of-pocket costs that you might have to pay when you sell your home. So everything we've talked about up until now, the escrow fee, property tax, commissions, that sort of thing, those are all closing costs that get taken out of your net proceeds at the end of the transaction at closing. So you don't have to actually, come out of pocket for those. Now these next ones though are costs that you typically do have to come out of pocket for. And one of the biggest ones is the septic. If you're selling a home with a septic system, you're typically required to have the septic pumped and inspected. And that's going to cost between $400 and $600 here in Thurston County. And in addition, Thurston County requires you to fill out a time of transfer report along with a fee of $230. So you could figure around $700-800 on out-of-pocket selling costs if you have a septic system. And then there are repairs. If the buyer has an inspection and wants some repairs, most of the time you're going to come out of pocket for those. Sometimes if the seller doesn't have money, a contractor might be willing to make arrangements to get paid at closing, but generally repair costs are going to be out of pocket for the seller. For example, let's say, hypothetically, we're selling a home for $500,000 in Thurston County. So here's a net proceeds estimate for a property that's sold for $500,000. We'll use a hypothetical 5% commission rate in this example. Remember, commissions are negotiable. And we'll say that the buyer's agent and the seller's agent, they split that 50-50. So $12,500 goes to each. The escrow fee is going to be a little over $1,000. Title insurance policy covered that the seller buys to ensure the buyer's ownership interest in the property, around $1,500. There will be some prorated property tax, and that's going to, be prorated as of the date of closing, and it depends on the time of year the closing date is and how much the seller has paid already. That'll determine what that amount is. And then excise tax. Every time you sell the house, the state of Washington likes to get their cut. And on a $500,000 house in Thurston County, you're looking at about $8,000. Throw in some miscellaneous fees like a document prep fee and recording fee. So when you add all that up, you're looking at about $38,000 in closing costs for a $500,000 house, which is about 7.5% of the purchase price. Now, you would also subtract your mortgage amount. And let's look at an example with a mortgage of $250,000. So with the $250,000 that we paid off and the $38,000 in closing costs, our total selling costs are $288,148, which leaves us as the seller with a net proceeds of $211,851.64 on a $500,000 house with a $250,000 mortgage. Well, I hope I've given you a pretty good idea what to expect as far as your selling costs go. And if you're thinking of selling your home, whether it's very soon or whether it's months or just planning for the future, please get in touch with us. We offer a free consultation and market analysis. There are no strings attached. So we're going to listen to your goals and needs, and we'll help you figure out a plan for achieving those goals. We will give you an accurate estimate of your home's value and tell you how much you can sell your home for in today's market. We'll provide you with a net proceeds estimate, like the one we just looked at, that details your selling costs so that you know how much money are you going to walk away with at closing. And we'll give you personalized recommendations to get your home ready to sell, to put your best foot forward and maximize your value. So if that sounds good to you, please get in touch with us. My name's John Claybaugh with Sound Real Estate Brokers, and my contact information is on the screen. Please feel free to get in touch with me, or you can visit our website, mysoundhomes.com. Thanks for watching this video. I look forward to hearing from you.